You're listening to the Yin and Yang Show, a marketing and sales conversation with Lindsay Kelly and Brian Signorelli. Strategic and tactical advice about inbound sales and marketing.
Hi, welcome back to the Yin and Yang Show. Thanks for joining us again this week. I'm Lindsay Kelly with Prospect Builder, the marketing arm of our podcast, joined as always by my HubSpot friend, Sig.
Hey, Lindsay.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm slightly disappointed that you're not coming to us live from the beach today, as we promised people we would be doing. But I heard your little human, as you refer to some tiny human. Sorry, is under the weather. I'm sorry to hear that. Unfortunately.
Yes, I am as well, because it's always interesting to work at home with an 8-year-old. But she's been very good. Yesterday we had some My Little Pony happening very loudly in the background during a conference call. That was great. It's kind of too late once you're 10 minutes into the conversation and all of a sudden My Little Pony Rainbow Rocks is blaring from my living room. So it was good. They couldn't hear it. So all you moms out there, you feel me, right? So this week we're going to continue on with the inoffensive close. And we had started the 3 closing techniques last week, and Sig went through the perfect close and the 1 to 10 closing technique, also known as the 10 point. And so today you're going to walk us through what the inoffensive close is.
That's right. So this is a tried and true closing technique to really cement the final stage of commitment from the potential customer that you'd be working with as to whether or not they will move forward with you, maybe before a final demo or presentation. It's kind of what some people would call a soft close.
Okay.
So here's kind of how it works. So this is the kind of closing technique I would use before I went through a demo. And this was preceded, by the way, by, my sales process was 10 to 15 minute connect calls to understand, whether or not someone had some issue that they wanted to change, how serious that problem was or that goal was, the extent to which there was real urgency there. And then maybe learning a little bit about, their buying process or whether or not they've thought about money. And then we go through an exploratory call and a goal setting call. So those are 2 separate, typically 45-minute to hour-long conversations. So basically, this is the kind of talk track I would use at the very end of the 3rd call. So I've already spent at least 2 hours with the person, either over the phone or in person. And this is kind of what it sounds like. So the first thing I do when I get to the end of that 3rd conversation, before I would go into a product demo, for example, or if you don't do demos in your industry, a presentation or a proposal or whatever that looks like, or contract presentation. The first thing I would do is recap the kind of core of what I knew. And I would say something to the effect of, Lindsay, based on everything we discussed, I see 3 ways that we could help you through a partnership. The first is, and then you go into your couple of reasons. So in my case, I would say something like, this is not now, but this is maybe like 4 years ago. I would say, the first thing is I think we can help you improve your internal marketing. The second is I think we can help you consolidate different software tools you're using to improve efficiency. And the third thing I think we can help you do is expand your marketing services down the funnel in order to grow the revenue that your agency is getting from retainers with your clients. And then I would say, is there anything that I missed or that you would want to add to that list? I just paused there. Right?
Basically, then they sing like canaries, right?
Yeah. Well, if you've actually listened to the person you're working with, this shouldn't be hard. If you really listen and you really understand their business, you should be able to nail 2 or 3 core challenges and pain points and or opportunities. I would highly recommend that you never do more than 3, because once you do more than 3, even though there may be more than 3, there might be 4, 5, 6, 7, it starts to become overwhelming, and people tend to get kind of paralyzed by or overwhelmed by how much potential work there is to be done. So 2 to 3 is ideal, and try to pick the 2 to 3 that really, stand tall. And oftentimes, if you've listened well and you know what you're talking about, the prospect is going to say, no, you didn't miss anything. That sounds spot on. And then the question is, okay, what do you say after that?
Right.
Right? Because it's like this awkward pause. And most sales reps would jump in and say, okay, great. So like, should I send a contract over? That's not what you want to do. Instead, what I recommend is asking these 4 questions in this order specifically, assuming your prospect says, after you've recapped what you know about their business, the prospect says, no, you didn't miss anything. I think you're spot on. So at this point, I would ask the following 4 questions. I'd say, okay, so at this point, Lindsay, do you feel like I truly have a good understanding of your business and what you're trying to achieve? And you'd say yes. And then the second question I'd ask is, all right, and do you also believe that the plan that you and I have laid out together today and over the course of our previous calls are going to help you get to the goals that you want to get to and overcome some of the challenges we discussed? You would say yes. And then the third question I'd ask is, and you can't just say this question. You have to kind of say it in a very curious way. I'd say something effective like, there's one last thing I was sort of thinking about is, just in case I missed it, Lindsay, are there any alternative plans that you've been discussing or considering that you are equally confident in that are going to get you to these goals or overcome these challenges we talked about? And say no, ideally. Or if you say, well, actually we have, then great, I've sniffed out a landmine before we get into any negotiation or contracting or presentations or whatever. I've kind of sniffed out an objection basically beforehand, and then we would discuss that, so on and so forth. And the last question is, if you said no and said, no, there is no alternative plan, I don't have an alternative, like this is it. I would say, okay, so then assuming that, I would kind of set it up in a way to say, okay, so the next step from here is typically to go through a product demonstration. So assuming that the product demo meets your expectations, do you want our help by partnering together? And at that point, the prospect should say yes. And that's basically a soft close. And the reason that we ask the question that way is that that last question is designed to secure a close without coming off as aggressive or pushy. And what we're psychologically doing here is kind of layering in, again, this kind of comes back to this concept of like conversational hypnosis, but it's conversational hypnosis used for good, not evil. So the reason I'm asking those 4 questions in that order is to get a lot of yeses out of somebody. So you notice the first question I'd said was, do you feel like I have a good understanding of your business and you're trying to achieve? Yes. Do you believe the plan we've laid out is going to get you to these goals? Yes. Do you have an alternative plan to get to those goals? No, I don't. I've got no other plan. There's no other way we're going to get here. Okay, great. And then the last is, okay, assuming that, the last step in the process meets your expectations, is there any reason you wouldn't be ready to move forward and work together or partner together? It's giving them permission to basically say, well, yeah, you know what? There are a few things that we haven't covered yet that I would need to talk about. So no matter which way the conversation turns out, you're setting yourself up for that, again, commitment to move forward. And if there is no commitment to move forward, then you've at least uncovered what some of the objections are. And even at that point, like you could actually combine this technique with the 1 to 10 closing technique, because if you do get a lot of objections, that would be a time where you could go into that 1 to 10 and say, okay, well, like, let's take a step back, talk to me overall, scale of 1 to 10, 1 being, let's never talk to each other again, 10 being, I'm ready to sign up right now and start working with you. Where would you say you are? And then you kind of go into that line of questioning there. So
yeah, I can see how that would flow well together.
Yeah. So this is something that I taught every single one of my team members when I was a manager. This is something I used religiously when I was a rep, and had extremely, extremely good success with it, because at the end of the day, it's actually not about the close. It's about the commitment to taking another step. And if there is no commitment, it's simply about understanding what is preventing somebody from being at the point where they are comfortable and ready to make that decision.
That's awesome. No, and it's funny because I think back to when you were selling me and my former business partner, and all of these things that you're talking about. I'm like, well, yeah, he did that. And then you made me write down all the things that I wanted and could see in my future. And I'm like, well, yeah, if I have HubSpot, I can have a boat.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
I don't have a boat, but then again, that's because my husband says no. So hopefully this was helpful for everybody. This is the third step in the how to close series that, or the how-to series that we're doing. And this was how to close basically, which is awesome. So thank you. I think we were pretty good on our 10-minute promise on that one. And
wonderful.
Yeah, we've been pretty good about this whole 10-minute, quick snippets of information for you because summer is so busy. And, I'm so happy that we were able to go through that last one. I'm glad you saved it because that was a good one, a very important one. So as always, you can find SIG at Inbound Seller. You can find me at LV Kelly with an EY. Folks, until next time, keep the conversation going.
Yeah, keep talking.
You've been listening to the Yin and Yang Show, a marketing and sales conversation with Lindsay Kelly and Brian Signorelli. Join us online at yinandyang.fm.